I recently heard Run DMC doing an interview that they were supposed to do a collaboration with Michael, and DMC was startled when Bubbles ran up on him and he hit Bubbles, and there was no and Michael never called back. The collaboration was over, and so I quickly realized, knowing all the true stories, that the only person that ever hit Bubbles and learned to still and lived to still have a loving relationship with Michael Jackson was Dick Gregory. He said out of the corner of his eye, he saw some shit coming at him, and he said he knew it was little, it was wearing a tux, and he didn't know what the fuck. He kicked the shit out of Bubbles. Bubbles slid across the room. Michael screamed, and Pop was like, "What the? You got this nigga, little nigga, running up on me with a tuxedo and a fucking diaper?"
Oh my God, I wish I saw the.
And so Michael screamed, and then the new protocol was whenever Dick comes over, put Bubbles in the back. And so, it wasn't Dick's not allowed to come over anymore. It just was, they had to Dick Gregory proof Bubbles.
When they say this show features living color, you better believe it.
Dick Gregory was one of the greatest political comedians to ever live.
In about 6 more months, they're going to be forced to hire Negro bus drivers in Mississippi, so we're growing steering wheels so they can drive from the back of the bus.
His stage presence was so smooth.
Dick Gregory changed the entire landscape of stand-up comedy.
Football's a fair sport for my people. Only sport in the world a Negro can chase a white man and 40,000 people stand up and cheer.
Damn, he's talking to these white people like that.
He just spoke his truth.
What's overlooked is how unafraid he was.
Are you out to give people a good laugh? Are you out to make a very definite point? I happen to believe that you can't laugh social problems out of existence.
Hey everybody, this is Mike from Reelblack TV, and I'm with
Brother Ron Hurd from WeAllBe TV.
And we have the honor and privilege of sitting here for a little while with Dr. Christian Gregory.
Absolutely.
Son of Baba Dick Gregory and executive producer of the new film, The One and Only Dick Gregory.
One and only.
So, welcome to the show. We haven't had an opportunity to meet. Last night we had an opportunity to see the movie. Which is fantastic. And it answers a lot of questions for a lot of people who are fans of our platform. So we encourage people to check that out.
Absolutely.
But, we want to talk about the film as well as the other things that are happening with the Gregory estate. But I know, today's Father's Day. I know, Ron, you want to kick it off?
Definitely. I mean, Father's Day is very important. Celebrating all the fathers out there, because especially Black Fathers matter. And with Baba Dick Gregory, it was interesting y'all brought up the subject of fatherhood and how you growing up as a Gregory, how did it impact you, and was Baba a good or decent father, or was he a bad father? I mean, what is the story from your perspective?
Okay, let's jump right into it. First, I want to thank both of you. So, Brother Mike, Brother Ron, truly a pleasure to be. I'm kind of in the middle like a referee. So that was intentional, folks. So there was a lot of passion in the interviews that both of you gentlemen did with my dad. I noticed you never gave him one of these baton like mics. You always had the brother with the big little cotton. Said, Brother Dick may course correct on us. So no, it's a true blessing. The platforms that plural that both of you have, and the folks you reach, it's important. I mean, it's important. My dad was always an own your own media guy, and now we're in a day that it's doable. And so we're chopping it up in the hotel room. It's the morning. It's yesterday was Juneteenth for the worldwide premiere, and the larger audience will be able to see it on Showtime on July 4th, Independence Day. So here it is, Father's Day. Very happy Father's Day to all the fathers and both of you gentlemen. I am not a father. I'm still the only child in my home. But growing up with a just a beautiful role model of what Black love and Black fatherhood was all about. And we touched upon this in the film, but it was, and I want to answer your question, but. At a very, very young age in my life and my siblings' life, my dad made it very clear he was the father to a movement, and made it very clear he was willing to die for that movement. And the movement became first in the pecking order. And when someone explains that to you at a young age and very clearly, you don't struggle with it because you knew, it would say, hey, what was it like to be Dick Gregory's son? I wouldn't know anything different. This is my world. This is my life. And so, my dad would always say, don't talk to me about the black family. I am the black family. We don't need folks outside looking in, trying to figure out the inner dynamics. And my dad would also say, Hitler had a mother and father at home. Jack the Ripper had a mother and father at home. And he'd say most niggas aren't home when they are home. And so the reality is that being present, there's a lot of folks who are just there, physically there, but they're not present in the moment. They're not, parents who are just looking at their devices, children that are, they're not present. They're just occupying the same space. My dad, even 6 months, my dad sat fasting. I was probably about 11 or 12 years old in an Iranian prison cell. He was there working to get the American hostages back. When they were on his own dime, was immediately arrested upon touching down. 6 months in a prison. And I got the part of the reason I know how beautiful Iran is because he sent postcards to each and every one of the children. Every week we just got a stack of postcards that he was writing for prison. And I'm sure he was sending them to other folks as well, because the amount of love that Dick Gregory had, and I don't even want to say had, because his love is still present, has for humanity is really, you can't quantify it. And so, yes, I wake up every morning just filled with so much gratitude for just the fact of who my father is, and I don't mean the celebrity, I mean the human being, the humanitarian, the activist, and then just all of the blessings. My dad's childhood was profoundly difficult, and then, I always used to say, Pop, you changed the DNA, you restructured the Gregory DNA, like most black families, diabetes, cholesterol, none of that, because, the most important 20 years in anyone's life is 0 to 20. That's foundational. It's when your immune system's developing, musculoskeletal, lymphatic system. And the biggest blessing you could ever give folks is health. The rest of the world caught up. Us Gregory's, we refer to as health nuts. And so now you go out and there's 5-star vegan restaurants. And so it's beautiful to sit and reflect. But I express gratitude to the man, to the, my dad was like a supernova. And, you get older, limelight gets heavy. And he was struggling with some age-related things. But, he'd sit down with both of y'all brothers, and once a camera and lights are on, he would reverse age right before your eyes and lock into his frontal lobe. And he just had some good, there was a lot of fire. There was a fine line between anger and passion. That was passion. And when we used to get it, we viewed it like a baptism. It was like, hey, what a blessing. Pressure and heat make steel, and that's why most of us Gregory children are pretty strong.
That's right. I had asked you that question last night. You're so well adjusted. Now, but the movie makes it very clear that passion was that wrath that he put on us, because
he wasn't always sure if y'all were listening. So
Well, to be clear, am I interviewing you, or did I come to interview you?
It'd be a little more colorful than that. Who's interviewing who? Am I interviewing you, or you interviewing me? Yeah, he didn't like to have his time wasted. So
the question is, how are you so well adjusted? I mean, what? I mean, did you go through a rebellious stage, or did you break free of some of this belief system, or how did you become your own person?
Yes, I agree. Great question. And that's the power of the mind. Nature versus nurture, and we don't. And I always say nature and nurture because it's a combination of the two. It's not just one of them. And so here you have 10 Gregory children. We all have the same DNA, but the combination of life experiences shape us to be the folks who we ultimately wind up being. So, just because of proximity. So I was a chiropractor for 25 years, practicing in Washington, D.C., and, to my dad, I was the best healthcare provider in the world. I mean, I literally graduated from chiropractic school. The next day, my pop flew down. We flew up to New York. He says, I got someone I want you to adjust. And we walk into Miss Cicely Tyson's apartment. Yeah, I mean, my hands are shaking, man. Like, I'm not even licensed yet. And I said, wait a minute, you want me to adjust Miss Tyson? And my hands were shaking so bad, I thought she thought it was the healing energy coming from it. And I just rolled with that. Right. But it was, so my point in that is proximity. So I saw, it's one thing to see others respond to your father, but I saw the folks that most of the world also looks up to, you know, just the reverence that they had for the man. And so it helped me to understand that I have we have a job to do, and I had a job to do. And Miss Tyson would always say, once an adult, twice a child. My dad's first childhood was profoundly difficult. And so I was hell-bent that his second childhood would be miraculous. And it was. And you all got to enjoy you all didn't know Dick Gregory in the prime of his life. I mean, Dick Gregory in the early 60s was the #1 entertainer in America, not black or white, #1, period. I mean, every 2 nights a week he was on The Tonight Show. I mean, he was the toast of the town, but he always struggled with that because he wanted to be rooted and connected with his people. So he would be uptown during the day, out working the clubs, hanging out with all the white folks, and then eating. He would eat with them. Then midnight he'd go to the South Side and hang out with the brothers at the Rib Shack. That's how he got to be 260 pounds. The duality of it.
All right, but you have not answered the question. I am still, if my molecular structure was shifted from just 6 hours of being exposed to your father, you know, your entire lifetime, Right. How do you escape that? How do you rationalize that and become your own being? Or do you take it like he's superhuman and you give him a pass?
No, I would never be foolish enough, and this is to ever think a man who gave so much, I could give a pass. Like, you know, this man got a pass from the world because he earned it. Like blood, sweat, and tears on the ground, fighting like no one I've ever seen fight for, you know, the love of I say humanity, but really, I mean, it was animals, it was the environment, you know. So to answer your question as specifically as I can, there was a duty. You know, us Gregory, we were clear on how my mom's, you know, grew up incredibly difficult times. You know, everything was insecure. Food insecurity, housing insecurity, probably at times love insecurity, paternal insecurity. So the blessings that we had, you know, some people, you had a silver spoon. We had so many silver spoons, we were gagging on them. So how could I sit with all that we received, you know, never went to bed hungry even halfway a day in my life. We would fast regularly, so I knew what hunger was, but, you know, we made a decision as a family to do that. And so I said, wow, as difficult as it is to literally go without food for 7 days, you know, try it for 7 years, try it for 7 months. And so it was, you know, my parents encourage us all to be big picture folks. And so when you look at life from 30,000 feet up, and I wasn't always this clear, you know, we were just kids tearing up, having fun. We tore shit apart like most other kids, especially because there were 10 of us. So you realize that you got so much, that we gave so much back. So yes, did I go through I think, you know, testosterone starts dripping. We get a little, you know, hair on our chest, hair on our lip, and we start, you know, being big dogs. But, you know, we had no sugar in the home. So when most kids were experiencing, you know, with drugs and alcohol, you know, us Gregory's were sneaking and eating, you know, a Reese's cup, a Snickers bar. And I would, you know, I'll say it right here on both y'all's platform, you know, for a child who never had high fructose corn syrup, the first time I had that, it hit like heroin. So it was, and we didn't have to worry about getting in trouble from anyone but Pops. And he probably would have been just as disappointed if we had a heroin needle or a Snickers bar. So we were clear. So no, it just is there. We were very clear that the movement came first, not just for him, but for the Gregory unit, the Gregory family. And when it, you know, it's like asking, you know, someone in a royal family, it's all I know, you know, service. That's why I loved practicing as a chiropractor. It's like helping folks get out of pain, helping sick folks get well, and to be able to serve as my dad was dealing with health issues, to be able to serve in, you know, coordinate with y'all for the shows and the interviews. I mean, the same passion he would put in for a CNN interview, he would put in for y'all's interview. It wasn't like he was like, oh, let me give these cats just a little bit. I mean, he was constantly all in. And there were others, interviews that he did, but you two, your platforms. There's a lot of folks, and I never had a chance to thank you. I appreciate both of y'all, keeping the legacy alive, keeping him out there in front of the people. You learned so much in the documentary, and I July 4th, I can't wait for all the folks who weren't with us last night to get an opportunity to not see it, but experience it.
Yeah, we'll get into the movie next, but I don't know, Ron, if you had any follow-up.
I have a lot of different things, but let me ask you one word to describe your father.
Awesome.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, tell us about the film and the process of getting it made.
So, Andre Gaines, just an incredible human being. He's the cool, loving little brother I never had. He just is a real down-to-earth, very talented. His intellectual, his financial, he was just all in on this project. He didn't have a lot of folks at the beginning because Pops could be prickly. A lot of people wanted to do the story, but they were waiting for Pops not to be here to do the story. And so Andre, and just kudos to him, because it started out bad. Andre went through what I call an intellectual hazing. It was a lot of tough love that brother endured. And, and that's part of my test, because I don't even... My dad had a lot of folks around him, a lot of handlers, and he would always refer to his, I won't say A-team, because they were not A-team, trifling niggas with talent. And I would say, Pop, I agree with you on the trifling nigga part, but the talent part is subjective. And most of these cats do not even, they have their best interest before your best interest. But it kept all the bullshit away. So whenever he realized something was real, he would say, hey, call my son Christian. So once I got a call from anyone, I knew he had already vetted it and he was somewhat interested in it. And so Andre it was during the first BLM movement, and black folks were fired up, white folks were calling and saying, oh, how can we help? Y'all need to call each other. Don't call black folks asking for help. Don't ask the victims how can you and Dick Gregory's already told you, be loving and lovable. Start with that. And so Andre, it initially started out as wanting to interview Dick Gregory as part of this larger Black Lives Matter piece he was doing. After the first interview, it became to him, because I already knew it, because this happened a lot. He said, oh, we want your dad to be part of something. I said, well, how much is part of it? Because if it's over 10%, then it's a whole different structure for that, because, he's a principal in it. And so once it became clear that this had morphed into a Dick Gregory film, I said, oh, we need to go back and we need to reset this. And that's what we did. And very clearly, this was 2015, and it was just, Dick Gregory Film, LLC. And, back then, folks would do Kickstarters and other things. So poor Andre started a Kickstarter, when Dick Gregory, whenever he heard someone was raising money in his name, he let Andre have it. And I said, you explain to him how that works. And at this point, I wasn't part of it at all, other than being the negotiator between them and my dad. Fast forward to 2021, and just to see the partnership, just to see Lena Waithe, Kevin Hart, and these people aren't just, Dick Gregory would always say, I don't hang out with celebrities, and that was true. That didn't mean some of his friends didn't so happen to be celebrities. Right. I mean, he wasn't at the Grammys, he wasn't at the Oscars, and so so many young folks that only know Dick Gregory at the latter portion of it, everything he says, they hold on to it hook and sinker, and they see him, posing for a picture with, Eddie Murphy. Oh, Dick said he done. No, he did. He was never in my life did I see my dad with a bodyguard. Me and my brother Gregory were pretty big guys from a young age. So at least 5 times Jet Magazine ran pictures of my dad with me and my brother Greg and said Dick Gregory with his bodyguards. And so my dad was always so upset. He'd be like, what are you niggas eating? And so he was always so upset. He said, you're tapping into what well, I'm telling folks I never had bodyguards, and here y'all with big swollen 19-inch necks. So it was, the process was 5 films. I mean, we probably edited 4 films that are on the figuratively on the editing room floor. It really probably should have been a series, but I mean, you're a film guy, you know this all too well. The financial equations that go into it, how will this land better? There will be more. I mean, this is the first. I mean, my dad wrote 16 books, 12, well, half were studio albums, but 12 albums, and all of that intellectual property, it's not historical. It still is relevant today, sadly, because we should be looking at like, well, those were some difficult times. Well, it still is now. And so those are the tools. All of his books we've republished. All of them are available for the first time on Audible's platform. And so they're theatrically read. So as a chiropractor, I encourage folks not to do this. So I say, hey, go listen to it. Go listen to it. Go experience it. His story is America. I mean, so it's so befitting that on, we're coming out of a pandemic, the fog is lifting, 2021. We've probably violated 50 COVID protocols in this room right now because we're all moving out of it. It's so proper that this summer, all of the holidays, Father's Day, Juneteenth yesterday, Independence Day. I hope you like Dick Gregory because he's taken over your summer. That's for certain.
Yeah, I want to ask you because you said y'all left several films on the floor. I was surprised y'all were able to get that under 2 hours what we saw yesterday. So why are the plans going forward? Because there's so much rich material from the Dick Gregory legacy. I can even think about today is the anniversary of the kidnapping and lynching of Swerner, Cheney, and Goodman, the 3 civil rights workers, and your father played a prominent role that's not always talked about, and find out what happened to those young men.
Great point. So let me answer it how you asked it. This is the first of many. So this is not a one and done. And I'm not just one of the children of Dick Gregory. I managed my dad for the last 20 years. I'm the sole executor of his estate, and I protect his intellectual property the same way that most folks would protect physical property, tangible property, because intellectual property is like fine wine. It gets better with time, and if you protect it and you insulate it and you control who has access to it. Far too many of states have just, hey, take everything. We pick which of my dad's books we want to have developed into movies. I might as well break news here because that's what us Gregorys do. We get in trouble for selling things we're not supposed to say. The same team, so Kevin Hart, Andre Gaines, Lena Waithe, the same team have purchased the rights to multiple of my father's autobiographies, and is going to be developed into the biopic. And so immediately we've transitioned into that. And so this is just, this is like this is an appetizer. The real heavy lift in telling the story. And the only reason I'm an executive producer on this because my dad's life was complicated. I mean, he part of the reason we have all these images here, my dad metamorphed so many times, each of them, and he never lost the cornerstone, his North Star of being loving and lovable and just fighting for humanity, fighting for his people. When my dad passed and the whole world reached out, my cell phone crashed because my Gmail account had too many emails coming. I didn't know such thing could happen. I thought it was just, and I'm saying, I know I haven't got emails in 2 days since and it took me a minute with all of the psychological and emotional distress to piece together, like, wait a minute, this thing crashed. And so it was clear from the moment he transitioned to put a firewall up around his life, and really, because he gave it all. I mean, some of these interviews were 10 plus hours, as y'all know. I mean, because he won't, he's the Energizer Bunny. If you don't shut it down, he's like, he's like, I'm not gonna let this young cat out talk me. So we can go 10 hours. Mr. Gray, have you had anything to eat? Who has time to eat? So being on the front line, and so stay tuned. There's a lot more. Now you mentioned, and I just want to quickly, yes, breaking news, absolutely. My dad would always say when people say, "Hey, don't tell anybody," I said, "Nigga, I got friends." If someone told you it was a secret, you told me. Why are you putting limits on who I can tell? I say all the time, and I want to touch on what you asked me too. Dick Gregory was the original social media. I mean, Dick Gregory kept Kinko's. Before there was FedEx Kinko's, there was Dick Gregory Kinko's. You would give him something and say, hey, Brother Dick, don't show this to anyone. And I already knew the drill. Our next stop, we were going to Kinko's. We have 1,000 copies of this secret document. And hey, brother, hey, sister. And he would just pass it out as he walked down the street. So that's what media is, distributing information. As my dad would always say, information is power. Bad information is bad power. Good sense stopped being common sense a long time ago. And we need folks to bring us back to thinking logically. We stop thinking. We just, we're emotional. We respond. And half of it is what we're eating. Half of it's what we're putting into our body, what we're breathing, chemicals and products off-gassing in our home. There's so many. We've been building these swag bags for the last 2 weeks, and the ink on the bag has me and my wife hiving up, headaches, and so, because we just are very careful about what we allow into our home, because we understand what your body consumes is not just what you eat, it's what you breathe, what you smell, what you allow into your mind, and again, bad information. So during Freedom Summer, to get back to the point you were making, and it's a beautiful, beautiful story. Not what happened, the Dick Gregory's response. Anyone who is not clear on just how superhuman this man was. He was in Moscow. He had just checked into his hotel, got a phone call explaining to him what had happened. My pops always rolled with a lot of bags. I mean, he rolled, anything you wanted to try to disprove, he knew right where to go in the bag to show you the proof. He said, nigga, I seen the check.
So he invented the internet, right?
I mean, he was the internet. Yeah, he was, which the internet just connecting it, the World Wide Web, he was the nucleus of that web. So he flew overnight, which was hard to do back then. Airline industry has changed dramatically. Weren't just direct flights, so flew all night to get back and made a decision, had a huge press conference because he knew just his presence of being just a superstar and showing up would force people to respond.
Let's go back a notch for the younger viewers who don't know about Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman.
And so, just to back up, because that is a very good question. The Freedom Summer was, and my dad actually was part, and it probably would disappoint me a little bit, he was part of the entertainment aspect of that. So it was the Freedom Summer choir that went out ahead of time because, he said, black folks want to be entertained. Right. And so so my dad was in part, we have his schedule from where all of the places they were going to. And so he was part of Freedom Summer. And so he left to go, and there was another movement that was going on. I forget the name at the time, but that's what he was doing in Russia. And when he realized that two white men, one black man, part of the voter registration. I mean, what we're dealing with now in this day and age, when he realized that those three civil rights these were college students, activists were abducted. He knew immediately they were dead. I mean, he said, I knew immediately they were dead.
He did work with Mega down in Mississippi, so he knew the environment.
He knew the environment.
Right.
I mean, really, it's his love for Medgar. I mean, his love for Sergeant Medgar Evers is really the catalyst for Dick Gregory becoming an activist, because that was the first time he saw someone that was fearless but not reckless. Someone that said, hey, look, and that's his whole, I'm willing to die for this. Right. That came from Medgar. I mean, the fearlessness that you have seen in my dad's lifetime, part of it, and being able to reflect on it since he's passed, I'm certain there was a little survivor's remorse, because had my older brother, Richard Jr., not passed, that set my dad on a different trajectory. So a couple months after that, when Medgar was assassinated, my dad was certain he would have been there with Medgar. And he's told stories about, just Dick Gregory and Medgar Evers late at night driving around and just feeling the sense of someone's about to die. He said you could feel it in the air, and they looked at each other and realized, yeah, that someone is, we're the biggest two out here making this fuss. We're the agitators. That someone is most likely us. And so I think, and I never felt this way till after my dad passed and going back and reflecting on it, I think there was a a little survivor's remorse, because he honestly thought, I mean, so many people in his orbit, died a violent death.
He died before the age of 40.
Oh,
He was 37, Malcolm and King, 39.
I mean,
Not in
and
their prime.
we talk about just the black folks in his orbit,
Mm-hmm.
but my dad had a relationship with JFK, with RFK, all these folks. And so a lot of times, young brothers who think they figured it out. Well, Dick Gregory's around all these niggas who died. He must. Well, how did he not? And this is and
you brought that up.
well, I mean, and the only reason when folks are soldiers on the front line, it's what people die. I mean, they were killed. We talk about the names of the bigger personalities, bigger, activists that were killed. There were plenty of nameless folks, we don't know the name, which is a shame, who died for this movement. And so there was a lot of death. And I wouldn't say he was lucky. I would say, universal God had different plans for him.
You know what, though? I'm going to tell you this, because Dick was not only part of Freedom Summer, he inspired Freedom Summer.
Absolutely.
Bob Moses and them said they saw what your dad did in the Greenwood when the government cut them black folks from their benefits. He
brought them
got
food.
that plane and stuff. A one-man movement inspired Bob Moses and them to do Freedom Summer. And also Selma. He did Selma. He was there before all this stuff went down.
To lead by example.
That's right.
I mean, as we mentioned last night on the Q&A after the film, he didn't have a blueprint, but he left us one. That's right. He took a lot of body blows in developing that blueprint, but he left us one for all of us to do more. But back to Freedom Summer for a moment, he realized celebrity and financial rewards is how you motivate folks. A lot of them, a lot of those folks were poor white folks. Yeah. And so when one of the cops were arresting him, calling him nigger, aggressively putting the cuffs on him into the car. And that was the first time I think my dad heard, the confident being called nigger. And he just said, hold on, white boy. And like real talk, like things you could not, folks died for saying it. He said, you come up to my house in Chicago, then you take me to your house down here, and I'll show you who the nigga is. And so he was in that whip that was all, and it's one thing to talk shit when you're not, out there with it, right, with the baton inches from your head. It was, and I know that stuck with that cat. So he realized that it was $75,000. Don't quote me on the figure, which was a lot of money then. Yeah. So it was actually more than that. He put up about $25,000 of it as Hugh Hefner to back the rest of it. Calls started coming in. The FBI was embarrassed by it, so they quickly put $30,000 up. But the reward and the tips that led to them finding, tragically, those 3 killed civil rights workers was from Dick Gregory's money.
But the Hollywood said, the Mississippi Burden version, that it was the mob. The FBI brought the mob to interrogate the good old boys or waterboard them. But they don't give the credit to your father, though.
Hollywood said. You said it right there. Hollywood said. Yeah, Hollywood's not facts. Yeah, and that's the importance of, what we're doing. That's the importance of, can only black people make films about black folks? All I know is you can tell when people love their subject by the work that you see. You can tell the love that people have, and you can tell when it's folks who, there's a lot of, as my dad would always say, there's a lot of niggas that hate niggas. And so you can tell when, so it's not just enough to be black, you have to love black people, and that love comes across in the art.
Well, was it the archival footage, like when his jokes, they still hit today. I was laughing because it's so damn true. I wanted to cry. But why them jokes just like what he was saying there, it still hits today. And I think that's a part of the frustration. That's why he was so frustrated at the end too. Because all the friends he lost and all the sacrifices he made, he's still at the same place, so he's not worse.
He often felt, and he was quick to acknowledge the progress. Things were profoundly different. It's almost a disservice to folks who fought so hard to say, oh, it's still the same. It still needs a tremendous amount of work, but it is, profoundly better than what the reality was back then. And now, what used to take 50 buses of civil rights workers showing up, now you can do with one digital camera. This is the new movement. This is how, we disseminate information and good information. And so he was willing to put his finances on the line, his life. He didn't pay for other folks to do it. Right. You know, he chartered that plane and flew in with the food. You see the images of him lifting. You know how many folks, you know, with that level of celebrity, they hire folks to do all of that. He wanted to be clear because he didn't want those people to feel like it was a handout. He didn't want them to feel bad about receiving it. He wanted them to know, like, hey, I'm treating y'all like family, not like family. I mean, black folks were family. That was his family. And so many people say, well, you know, my dad was always so public. Phone number always listed, address always listed, a front door, there wasn't even a lock on it. So, of course, we didn't have a key. And so when he passed, we immediately said, no, we're open. And this man was a man of the people. This man was the amount of folks who reached out to me feeling like they had lost their own dad because, you know, Baba was their Baba. You know, they learned so much from him. And, you know, he may be gone from the physical realm, but, you know, the fatherhood on this fatherhood is still alive and well. There's a lot of lessons that, you know, we could chop it up for hours, but more than that, you know, folks are going to see.
That's right.
Well, talk more about the archival. I mean, one of the blessings of this film is that his career was documented from the earliest days. He's one of the most documented figures of the 20th and 21st century. I mean, how difficult was it to find the material and then to get access to be able to use it in the film?
Excellent question. So close to 1,500 hours of archival video and audio. For 60 years, this man had a mic and camera in front of his face. It was almost an embarrassment of riches how much we had to go through to extract what was going to be the most moving in trying to tell this narrative. One of the most difficult questions you can ask us Gregory children is, hey, I don't know your dad. What does your dad do? Now I can, hey, you got 110 minutes? Check this out. Then, you know, circle back to me and let's talk it on the backside. Because he did so much. And so the only reason it was difficult, it wasn't difficult to find. What was difficult is that it kept coming in, which was a blessing. But, you know, poor Andre, because, you know, more incredible things came, and we just had to keep resetting so many times. Like, you know, throw that movie aside. This totally changed. And so when Bob Lipsyte, the collaborator who my dad wrote Nigger with, when Bob Lipsyte sent his archives, so it was just, I mean, you know, I wasn't born until 1970. My dad did Nigger in 1963. So for me to hear, you know, hours upon hours of just my young 35-year-old Dick Gregory just clear. You know, when we get age, we get a little cobwebs, we get a little off. I'm only 50 and I have a difficult time staying on task. And so he was just laser focused, and that's what you hear. When you hear a 35-year-old Dick Gregory narrating his own life, that's what that allowed us to do, and that's what really made this incredibly special. Because, you know, my pops had a lot of wild folks that loved him, and if it wasn't him saying it in his own word, y'all niggas changing Dick Gregory's story. And so to hear him say it, you know, and you know, in fairness, we all have a right to kind of grow and evolve and for our opinions to change. Well, I heard him say, like, later in life, people would always ask my dad, hey, Mr. Gregory, are you still a vegan? He said, depends who's watching. And so, you know, he had a right to pivot and change. You know, it's always the folks who are not sacrificing, not serving, that want to be hypersensitive and vigilant about what the folks on the front line are doing. So the archival is extensive. I mean, it is absolutely extensive. And this, I'm certain, and that's why, you know, it's and I don't consider this, you know, shameless advertising. If we want to see more stuff like this, we have to support it. Right. And we support it by spreading the word. Eyeballs on screens is what moves the narrative. I mean, it's been a marvelous relationship with Showtime, but, you know, this is a business. You know, they're in this to make money, and if folks don't watch it, you don't get more of it. So that's important that you all, you know, tune in.
Well, that's July 4th.
July 4th.
July 4th.
9 p.m. Eastern time.
Right. But so what else is in the vault then? I mean, as an archivist, I'm definitely interested. Like, you know, I wish I had captured some of the last shows he was doing because they were incredible. But I'm sure
they were captured.
I'm sure they were. and I'm sure there's lots of stuff. The books are out. I mean, can you just give us an overview of what's been released so far with the estate and what we can look forward to?
Absolutely. So the first, my dad's book, Nigger, over 1 million copies sold. So right now we've released the 4th paperback, trade edition paperback. That was almost immediately. That was almost 6 months after my dad passed. We knew we wanted to get that back out there. The title, the name, limits the marketing aspects that you have with it. But so one of the kind of workarounds and how they got large segments of Nigger into textbooks is they extracted certain sections and gave it shame, the sub kind of essay shame that was extracted. Shame is in virtually all McGraw-Hill textbooks in this country has shame in it. And so a lot of these young folks, black, white, are being exposed to Dick Gregory, not the totality of him, but just that small aspect of him at a very young age. So we got the autobiography back out there. We entered into a multiple book deal with Audible. Audible bought 12 of my dad's books that, I mean, almost every 2 months there's another one that's being released on the platform, and they're doing theatrical reads with it. So I mean, we get in the car for a road trip, we tune it in, sync it to the system, and it just is, it's like he's still here with us. And so it's like he's still here with us. We have so many partnerships. So HarperCollins owns 4 of my dad's books, and so Cooking with Mother Nature, which we just re-released, Political Primer, thank you, and No More Lies, No More Lies is just, I mean, it's excellent. I mean, No More Lies, if you haven't read No More Lies, it is just an incredible book. And Reading Between the Lies, I forget the name of it, Black History, Reading Between the Lies. And so, because I read between the lines, and Pop said Reading Between the Lies. And so right now as we speak, there's 6 of his books currently in publication. One of them we just released, Nigger, in Japan. So there's a Japanese. So folks in Japan, Dick Gregory's been trending on Twitter in Japan because there's a conversation about this book, about this title, and how that came to be. The singer Morrissey, he's superstar Morrissey. He performs almost exclusively with a large photograph of Dick Gregory behind him. And a Japanese publisher was at one of his shows in England and saw and said, who is this man that's been on this screen the entire, if you went to see Michael Jackson and there was a picture of someone on, you'd say, well, who is this man? And my dad knew Morrissey. I wouldn't call him friends, but whenever Morrissey, he would always try to connect with him, just hug him and absorb his energy. And, hopefully someone from Morrissey's camp will correct me if I'm wrong, but how the story was explained to me, Morrissey was going through a dark period in his life and was suicidal, and watched a Dick Gregory clip on YouTube. And what he got from that gave him the will and the desire to live again. And now you see, okay, well, that makes sense. This guy has become my rock. This guy brought me back and gave me the will to live again. So to all of my millions of fans all over the world, if it wasn't for him, there wouldn't be me. And there's countless folks. And that's why we sit here and think, you never know how far reaching any of these segments that we're doing here are going to be tomorrow. And what Morrissey saw was probably 10 years old at that time. Sometimes we'll all be gone, and the impact of this work will outlive us all. And so the publisher saw it. She said, this guy, who the picture of has a book, reached out to the estate, expressed interest, and we said, sure, we do a lot of foreign language deals with my dad's book. So we just signed a deal for it to be published in Croatia. So folks in Croatia, Indonesia, Japan are all reading Nigger. And so a good friend of mine works for Sony and speaks Japanese. So he held the book up, and white cat, and was like, this symbol here means knee, and this figure here means gar, knee gar. So you said that a little bit too good, my brother. I said, no, but I said I need to make sure my people know this means knee gar in case they're in Japan and they see that shit written on a receipt. They know that they know they need to pull someone aside. But to answer your question, there's tons of tons of intellectual property, the archives we should have a conversation about. We are getting all of his papers together. It's all digitized, and I want to at least share with you the list so at least you know what's there, because it would be too much to discuss.
Well, while we're here, though, the record albums, they've been out of print for over a decade. Is there an opportunity that will be coming soon?
Yes. So and a lot of them are out there now on digital platforms, and so but folks are getting back into vinyl again. They want something tangible they can hold. So we will be. So we did the books first. I mean, this stuff's been from the '60s. I mean, as we know, not just white folks, but business folks have been taking advantage of black talent ever since there was black talent. So some of these contracts on the back of napkins and that never had a proper legal vetting. There is a team. I don't want to make it seem like it's me alone. There is a massive legal team of folks who really love Dick Gregory, who are working hard to revert those rights from those bad contracts back to the estate. So a lot of that, now we've shifted to the albums. There's an extensive amount. We're getting control back of that so we can re-release it. So stay tuned.
Well, Bobby Dick's not the only one. I mean, most black artists from the '60s and '70s are now in a situation where they're able to get the rights to their masters back. So,
so copyright is complicated, as you know. I've had a crash course on it for the last 3 years, and so for there's 3 copyrights on live performances. Dick Gregory always, or any artist always owns the words that they say. So we can reprint it in books. No one can say, hey, we own that. But the audio mix of it, the cover art, we're getting it all back. And so there's a process to get it reverted, but we're almost there. We're almost there with the albums.
Fantastic.
Now, you talk about the musician that was saved by Dick Gregory. I know y'all touch upon the documentary about John Lennon and Yoko Ono. From my understanding, they brought Dick out. I know they was on the cover of Jet magazine with Dick Gregory, and they brought him out to their cave mansion in Europe. And Dick not only cured them and kept them off, they detoxed and never went back to the drug, but also he was an inspiration for the song Imagine.
If you look, no one inspires us to believe and imagine more than Dick Gregory. Right. And so there was no coincidence that, so many of our superstars, Michael Jackson, the John Lennon, as you mentioned, Marvin Gaye, just, close, and which is epic. If you haven't, it's available out there to listen to. If you haven't listened to Dick Gregory's eulogy of his good friend, Marvin Gaye, you're really in for a treat. And so, one of the many hats that this man wore was getting folks, off drugs. Getting folks, chemically realigned and realkalized to help them break addictions, whether it was food addiction, heroin addiction, which is just ravaging this country as we speak. Right. That was but it was always not. So many of these, 12-step programs fail because it's people in your face finger waving. He always did it with love. He always did. We would have folks come out to our farm and no one would know they were there. And there's some of the biggest names in the world would come to our farm and detox and just be around a big black loving family, ride bikes with us. Whenever someone was a gym, the reason my dad bought a 1,000-acre farm was for folks to come get off the grid and recharge their batteries. When the Watergate scandal broke, a young security guard, Frank Wills, they had cut the tape, opened the door, he closed the door, came back and realized it was open and called the police. So this young brother is the reason that Watergate even came to be, and he was unemployable after that. They just completely, and so Dick Gregory reached out to him and he said, man, I don't have any place to live. He moved in with us. So Frank Wills lived with us. We were out there tackling this nigga hard. He lived. He
basically 24.
He was young. He was young. And he worked with my dad. He went down to live with my dad in the Bahamas and worked at the weight loss facility there. When we opened the large facility in Florida, Frank just moved around but this was he was a fixer. He reached out to his people. He was a fixer. But yes, Charles Mingus, another one. I'll tell this story because it's being developed into a play as we speak. Charles Mingus was suicidal, and he came and he spent one night at our boathouse. And my dad stopped everything, locked the door, didn't let it. Was Charles Mingus, his agent, Jack Healy, and Dick Gregory. And Charles left that boathouse a renewed man with a desire to live again. And it was such a moving piece that Jack Healy, the agent, wrote a play about it, a story about it. And it's a 3-person play, and it is just telling about that experience and just how blown away Jack was to be a fly on the wall witnessing it and see someone who didn't want to live suddenly be re-inspired. Because we think money, your money, your success, I mean, that's a heavy burden. We don't realize how time people struggle with limelight. And for whatever reason, he was struggling. So, when folks, Minister Farrakhan that has his big farm, he does the same thing. That was a thing. Let me get you off of the grid. Let me get you away from the polluted air, polluted minds. Right. Come here, now I hear folks talking about walking barefoot and grounding yourself. Well, we that's why we're grounded. Reconnect with Mother Earth, and he had a real powerful relationship with the universe. I mean, my dad would come home. He had a tent bigger than this room, so he would pitch the tent himself. I say this with respect. My dad was like a dung beetle. He could lift 10 times his body weight. So he would say, with all those bags, you need a bellhop. No, I got it, brother. So he'd build the tent, a little shortwave radio, and he would just be gone, out in the farm in, 5 days, just with nothing but distilled water, and he wouldn't talk. So we'd go up to get a note that he'd write to my mom to bring back and forth. And then when he would come back down or would connect, he would just grunt because he didn't speak when he was fasting. And so to this day, it's miraculous to me that he could grunt and my mom would translate because she knew exactly what each grunt meant. And so that's a documentary on its own. There's the horse whisperer, right, and then there's the Dick Gregory whisperer. And Lillian Gregory was definitely the Lillian Gregory whisperer. I said, how did that grunt mean go do your homework, son? I said, I think you're just telling me what you want me to do, Mom. No, he'd nod his head like, no, not at all. I said, okay, I'm done. But no, it was, the blessings are just flowing.
I know Marion Barry talked about how your father saved his life in his autobiography.
Yes,
your father appears everywhere.
Marion Barry was a good brother. He spent some quality time with the Gregorys, and his story hasn't properly been told. I mean, right, it's just a miraculous man. I mean, what he was able to do. I live in D.C. I love D.C. His fingerprints are still I do a lot of real estate development work. I still get documents, rare documents I got to pull, and it still says Mayor Marion Barry. So and so that's maybe that'll be a project we all do together.
No, that's great. Now I wanted to segue. I mean, you kind of touched on it in the last chunk. The Showtime documentary does an excellent job of giving the narrative of Baba Dick as a human being. That's right. But it's for those who know him or knew him, I think he's still an enigma because of his spirituality. I mean, can we spend a few minutes just to talk about his place in the universe, not just here on Earth?
Absolutely. I frequently say this, and not in spooky blankets. I mean, curtains blowing at night. My dad's still very much here. He's still very much present. My father would always say, especially if it was late, some folks may have been drinking, maybe not. Hey, get home safely. When you get home, call and let the phone ring one time. I'll know it's you. And so he would always say that to folks. And so he would count those rings. If 5 people that got 5 rings, be like, okay, everyone got home safe. We don't have to, because he can't get off a call quick. So I think part of that was just so he could get some sleep and not get back on the phone. So when he passed, there were multiple little things that made it very clear to me that he was still communicating with me. And I'm sure with others. Oh, I mean, I mentioned Mr. Farrakhan a moment ago. 10 times he going, Dick was with me last night. Dick was, and just that beautiful voice and cadence the minister has. And I said, it's, and, don't quote me on it, but it was very similar to, well, don't feel too honored because he's talking to all of us. And so it was like, he's talking to all of us. And if we sit still and we listen, he told us all of this when he was here. I mean, the man was, he was prophetic. He used to say, talking about that spiritual piece, he used to say, there will become a day where a gallon of water is more than a gallon of gas. Well, that day hit. There will become a day when, just a little gasoline dabbed on your ear will become a status symbol because, he saw the strife that was going to happen when just look at what just happened here, 2 months ago, and through the 70s with the gas shortage. He always kind of, again, being vegans, that movement that came to be, there was so much that he, it was like a prophetic awakening. And, we would sit and we would meditate early in the morning. So all 10 of the kids, my mom and dad, and just sit still. And you'd sit still in that breeze, like the breeze that came through at the end of the documentary when we were all outside. I was clear what that was. I mean, that was the breeze I would always feel when we were on the pond, no matter how hot it was. You'd always feel that gentle breeze. And then afterwards, when we started talking, he said, "Do you feel that? Do you feel the universe, community?" And it was never viewed as, "Oh man, Pops is crazy." But it's like, "Oh, that was deep." And you're seeing you're listening to the leaves blow, and they're saying that you don't know. You can hear a baby, like laughter. You can watch a foreign film that you don't even understand, or a foreign comedian, you don't even speak the language. But laughter is universal. You see other folks, that's the whole purpose of a laugh track. Like, hey, time to laugh. You got to tell me when it's time to laugh. The medicinal properties of laughter and joy, this man understood universal joy and just was a, one man, wrecking machine for just getting that out in front of the masses. So when my dad passed, it was, like so many times in life, later in life, it was just the two of us. It was just the two of us. He had stopped talking for some time, and he was just, we were squeezing each other's hand, and I was in his ear, telling him all the things that I had told. It wasn't like I had to get it out quickly because, for 10 years I knew my dad's health was an issue and was failing, and so we had an opportunity to talk about everything, and that's rare. And so we had an opportunity to talk about everything. So I didn't have any last minute questions. And the man had talked so much in his lifetime, I wanted to allow him. In this country, we make the birthing process and the dying process a medical emergency. And we're all here for a finite amount of time. We're all going to transition. You should be able to do it in a way that is in line and befitting to your spirit. And the very, very, very last thing before he lost consciousness, and I always get a little choked up sharing this, he turned his head to the side, and that textbook Dick Gregory wink. So he gave that textbook Dick Gregory wink. And then he lost consciousness. And I quickly brought the rest of the family in. The next day was the solar eclipse, and with all the moving parts going on, the last thing I was like, my wife's like, let's just get out of the house. Let's just get out of the house. And she's a news producer, and the newsroom had given them the glasses. And I mean, I begrudgingly walked up to the rooftop and put on the glasses and looked up. And at that exact moment where the sun and the moon, were eclipsing, I mean, it sounds crazy to even say it to this day, was the exact wink. I dropped and I just fell to the ground and was like, damn, that's the one ring. That's the one ring. Him letting me know he had made it to wherever he is. And so it's in the tears and the emotion, it's really just joy. It's really just, we all are going to lose folks we love. So it is so part of my passion in doing this work. It's just that. It's passion. It's real. Like this isn't a job for me. I think some people look at, wow, well, this brother, it's just taking over his life. It's a lot. You know, it's like if your parents passed and left you 50 condominium complexes. I mean, it's a lot. And so to take the time and do the due diligence and do right by a person who did so right by us, yeah, it's an honor. It's an absolute honor.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. I definitely, the emotions in the room, hopefully it's carrying across. We'll give it a breath.
It's out there.
We'll take a breath, but please demystify this for me, because I'm a very literal-minded person, and sometimes it's hard for me to grasp, and that's why I get yelled at, I think. Who was doing the research? Were these real people, actual people doing research, like a research team, or was this a result of his spiritual connections?
Great question. So it really depends, like in his lifetime, which section we're talking about. Right. There was a time where there was payroll. There were folks out there that were paid to go out and research, and many of them were, a lot of folks that work in the intelligence gathering space, they get jaded and they move out of that space, and they know, who can I give this information to who will not be afraid to share it? And that was a no-brainer. Hey, Dick Gregory, Dick, again, a one-man, social media. Hey, Dick, one of the ways that, there was a couple things that kept Dick Gregory alive as long as he was, and one of them was that he kept no secrets. So, hey, we gave Dick the document. Well, Dick gave it to 1,000 people today, so we can't kill it. And so that was part of it. It was almost a race when someone, hey, don't tell anybody. Like, I just used to love to be in the room when someone would come in and say that, be like, I already know, Pop, we're heading to Kinko's. And so these guys, and that is one of the things that kept him alive. And the other one is, he would always joke. He would always say, I owe Neiman Marcus too much money for those white folks to ever let me die. And so and a lot of people don't know. There's so much stuff a lot of people don't know. My dad was, he drove. Even when he was older, he didn't want anyone else drive. He liked to drive himself. My dad loved classical music, so he would just drive around humming and singing at the top of his voice with the music cranked up, the classical music playing. It was either news or classical music. A freak storm came through Washington, D.C. He was in Rock Creek Park, and just a massive oak tree fell over and crushed his car. My dad's like 120 pounds wet. So he was able to bend over and lay down, but the entire roof of the car was caved in on him. So they came, jaws of life, they cut him out. And when I showed up, the officer pulled me aside, and one of the reasons I love D.C. because so many of the law enforcement look like us, right. And they had a ton of love for Dick Gregory. It was I can't even put in perspective the love that the Metropolitan Police Department, and they all knew him because they had all arrested him before, so they knew, hey, Dick, he'd be in the front with handcuffs on so loose he could have slipped right out of them in the front seat, chopped up like they were driving their grandpa back to the precinct. And so the brother pulled me aside and said, we showed up. And we called this in as a fatality. We said, there's no way whoever's in that car is alive. And so when I went to the back of the ambulance to talk, and he had a couple scratches on him, he said, hey, Doc, hey, man. He called me Doc and Champ just like all you long before I was even in chiropractic school. He said, yeah, I saw that little white woman from Neiman Marcus tell me to lay down, and I laid down quick. And the ambulance folks were crying loud. Hear this man literally, I'm a first responder, so I've extracted people from vehicles. It's loud, it's stressful, it's scary. Folks are in equipment. And in that moment, Dick Gregory was still absolutely hilarious. And it's what he describes as the difference between being a comic and being a humorist. And so he could get up and do comedy, But the funniest shit with Dick Gregory was doing just like we're doing now, just the off the cuff, where you saw his wit and his wisdom just jump out at you. I mean, those were, so how many folks just got extracted from a vehicle, and everyone, I mean, it was just joy. I mean, it was just absolute joy. So no, the universe was, and then it was a whole, hey, they finally found that tree that was killing all them white boys on the ski slopes. And so he had a whole piece about this tree, and he said, man, I've been pissing on trees my whole life. Them motherfuckers finally got even. It was like a whole piece, and we're dying laughing. It was razor thin line, and we could have lost them. I mean, we could have. I mean, again, 10 lives. 10 lives. There were so many titles that we could have went with this film, because he metamorphed so many times. And one of the things about metamorphosis, yes, you change, a beautiful evolution into a butterfly. And so, yes, you change, but your core DNA is still your core DNA. And those core principles, he never wavered.
He definitely was a hard man to kill. And I like the fact y'all touched upon the J. Edgar Hoover aspect of that, because people don't understand he ran for mayor of Chicago and also for president of the United States. And J. Edgar Hoover, that came out in the press that he had a hit out on Dick Gregory. He wanted the Chicago mob to assassinate Dick Gregory. You got to think about the Judas and the Black Messiah movie just came out this year with Fred Hampton being killed at 21 and Mark Clark. But your daddy was funny, but he was serious at the same time.
And that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Because you bring people in with love, just like Harry Belafonte so beautifully said in the film. Dick would bring you in with laughter, and then he would drop that truth bomb on you. It was just like, someone shadow boxing and this clubber langing you with a blow. I mean, he mastered, his timing. Like you heard Dave Chappelle talk about Dick Gregory and his timing and just how he knew the exact moment. And you can't learn that. You can't, that's just, you have it or you don't. You can't learn that. And so, yes, that here, my dad and I would get up early every morning and, I'm talking like 5 a.m. early and go for walks through D.C. where we lived. And every day we'd walk past the Hoover building, the J. Edgar Hoover building, the FBI building. And he's like, this white chump tried to kill me and he's been dead. And so we'd be... And the fact this white chump still has a building, to me, it's troubling. It's troubling. But yes, I have my dad's entire FBI file. That's a treat if you want to read through something. I read the entire file. It's extensive. We're thinking about doing a documentary a film based on the FBI file, because so I would call my mom and say, hey, Mom, do you remember the street address in the little house in Chicago? No, but I'd rattle that. Do you remember the license plate number of the car? You remember the VIN number? All that details in there. These folks were surveilling Dick Gregory and Lillian Gregory, every move they made, because people gave him information. And to answer your question a moment ago, he would always say, black folks are the janitors of all the buildings in the world. He was like, I got folks out here. And so initially there were folks on the payroll. Then later just became packages would just arrive to the farm. And some of the stuff I'm still not comfortable talking about because it's never seen the light of day. These are stories that would definitively disrupt the fabric of America if people watch some of the videos. And that was back then. You got VHS tapes that arrived to the home.
Right. But there's a layer of mystery there.
Intentionally.
In the purest sense of the word mystery. And there's a video on YouTube where Bob is talking about his process of going once a year to a fast and receiving information. Have either of you ever fasted before? Like 7 days, just nothing but water. So I literally just came off a 7-day water fast. And so my wife and I, we knew the premiere was going to be hectic. It's a big family. So it's like herding cats, so many moving parts. We said, life as we know it's about to get real hectic. Right. Let's get off the grid. Let's shut down. We picked an hour each day to check emails, check texts, didn't do much talking, did a tremendous amount of reading. And just 7 days
of H2O. In the first 48 hours, you're still getting, I mean, most of us have enough food source on our bodies, to eat good for some time. The what we feel as hunger pains is really not hunger pains. It's the brain saying, hey, you normally eat now, so we're secreting hydrochloric acid, and that's what you feel. After day 2, that goes away. So after day 2, the body doesn't know what's going on, but it says, okay, clearly there's no food coming. And there's like a gentle peace that comes over you, and you start receiving things. You start becoming clear on things you had forgotten. And so to do that, typically every year, my dad would go from Christmas to New Year, the 7 days, just on water and not talking and deep. And he said, look, life had been so good to him. He said, I don't need to celebrate all these holidays. Well, let me just get off the grid because I don't want to get in the way of it. And so his saying thank you, you both probably had seen this. My dad had a little clicker that he would always have, and he would be clicking. It was a counter, like someone who's responsible for the fire code, react capacity. And because I let him, most of the things I had to see, I didn't ask questions. I was like, you do whatever you do, and let me step in when you need me. And so, which really wasn't all that often. And so finally we were in the car, and he was riding shotgun and clicking. I said, Pop, I never asked you, because it was a long road trip, so we were just talking. He said, man, every time I click this, I'm just saying, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. That's just how thankful and how grateful he was. And I'm certain, not the hunger strikes he went on, because that was profound. Really, my dad passed away from vascular disease due to damage to his arteries that he had sustained for 20 years. We knew it was there from damage from the not fasting, because fasting is very medicinal, but from starving himself for aspects of the movement, primarily the 40 days he did on the for the Vietnam War, his opposition to the Vietnam War. So when he would say and talk about the universe, unless and any fasters out here that can attest to this, there's a clarity that's there. And, there's so many, I hate to talk about toxins, because what is toxins? But there are so many, on a cellular level, there's so much debris from all of the overconsumption and mental consumption too, to take a moment to cleanse and release other. People say, you're not eating, so you're not going to the bathroom. Of course, you go to the bathroom more when you're fasting than when you're eating, because it's all the body says, oh, shit, I've been treading water all this time. Now that you stopped force feeding me, let me go back and clean up all the stuff we've been literally, when people say they're full of shit, all the stuff we've been literally packing to the side, we can go back and get to. So that process, that was real. And so it's like running. If you're not a runner, you'll never understand what a runner's high is. But this is physiological. When the heel strikes the ground, there's a vibration that goes up and stimulates the pineal gland, and endorphins and all kind of other things there is a cat could have lost his shoe 5 miles back, and if he's deep, and he or she are deep in that runner's high, they'll be oblivious to it. And so my dad realized that the most powerful pharmacy in the world was the human body. And he really, he would go to bed and just have a stethoscope in and just be listening to sounds that his body was making. He would go, Dick Gregory to the dentist, that's a documentary. Dick Gregory going to the doctor. There was always a hazing. We go, new doctor, and before the doctor could even do anything, there was, let me make clear who's sitting in front of you. And never with disrespect, but just as clear as, it wasn't just when the camera was there. I called it an intellectual hazing that always took place. And then once it was over, it was like, all right, now can we get to the reason where, tell me about your sore throat. So it was, until you go through that and understand it, there really is a deeper spiritual connection that's very real.
So therefore, you're verifying to me and the audience here that a laser killed Michael Jackson at 3:00 in the morning.
Now, us Gregory's are quick not to let other folks put words in our mouth. So I don't know what killed Michael Jackson, because that's not my thing. Michael and my dad were great friends. So my dad was on the. I would say this: if anyone did know, he would know. So if anyone did know, he would know. But sometimes of all of the knowledge that Dick Gregory has shared, we pick up on the periphery stuff and we put it in the front. I mean, there's too much there. We don't have the luxury. It's like, I don't want to, call my nephew out, but during that whole flat earth time that everyone was worried, and I was like, nigga, you can't swim, you can't row a boat. It does not matter if the earth is flat, round, triangle, you are never going to see the end of it. So why are we spending time discussing it? Right. And so we get caught up in, and I would see this all the time, and very rarely do I make blanket assessments. But the biggest difference between white folks interacting with Dick Gregory and black folks interacting, Mr. Gregory, pleasure to meet you. I'm a big fan. You spoke at my college. Can we take a quick picture? Boom, 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 done. Right. Black folks, hey, brother Dick, oh my man, what you said about 9/11? I don't, what? What? And then how you even have the audacity? Here I'm here minding my goddamn business, shopping for clothes. You come up to me. I don't fuck with you on your job. You come up to me, and now you, who I don't, and that's when he'd always go into, truth doesn't have to be validated by ignorance. He would just lay into, and I'd see it coming, and I'd say, just say it's an honor to meet the man and keep it moving, and it's what's the purpose? So you can go, hey, I really put Dick Gregory in his place. Like there's some, and I'm not saying all, but a disproportionate amount of black folks walked up to Dick Gregory and wanted to say, well, I taught Dick Gregory something. And so yes, he was out there. Michael,
Well, again, that's just an example. We're using the word. We're using the word mystery.
Yes.
Because there's things none of us as individuals will ever know. We have to.
But he did save Michael Jackson's life back in 2005 during that trial.
He saved Michael's life a couple times.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
He saved Michael's life. My dad and Michael had a great relationship. The whole Jackson, when Randy Jackson was in a terrible motorcycle accident, they called Dick Gregory while he was still in the emergency room. And my dad showed up and was, blending cabbage and onions and wrapping it in an ace bandage around. The doctors were looking like, what in the fuck? Even in an emergency room, this brother's coming in here with cabbage and onion. My dad, and I'll get back to Michael in a minute, but my dad had to give, they needed a bone marrow sample back during his cancer. And, that's my dad, if you knew, you would have knew when you interviewed Dick Gregory to have a hypodermic needle around, because that was his one fear in life were needles. And so if there was a needle in sight of him, a very different man comes out. So, I came early because I was like, oh man, I know he's going to see the size of this needle that, is good, going into bone to extract bone marrow. And this isn't going to be a good thing. So we were at Howard University Hospital. Pollen was real bad. So we got up there and somehow in all of the bags of what he had brought a neti pot, and a little pot you use to rinse your sinuses. And so here's Dick Gregory, gown poorly tied, so his entire ass is hanging out, bending over the bed, and 3 of the doctors are laying down as he's neti potting the doctors that are getting ready to do his procedure. And I said, this has to be against every hospital policy and protocol and procedure, but if anyone could do it, it's Dick Gregory. And all 3, he said, hey, when they walked out the room, he said, hey, I gotta make sure these motherfuckers shit together before they start fucking with me. And so, he was the healer to the healers. But but Michael, and I don't know. My dad had a relationship with I've met Michael plenty of times, but just like the rest of the folks in my dad's life, hey, these are the Gregory children, how you doing? And kept it moving. Michael's life was complicated, and what twists and turns it went, I do not know. I know that whenever someone, when Michael bought the Beatles catalog, and when he bought it, he didn't know it contained all of the Beatles had previously bought all of Little Richard's music. Michael, without no one talking to him and never wanted a pat on the back for it, gave Little Richard all of his music back. And Little Richard was shocked. He was like, oh, and it wasn't like they were, they admired each other, but it was like they were close friends. And so this was there was a Michael, the businessman, that was incredibly savvy, that folks just didn't, because part of that, it's show business. You see, what's the persona. As my dad would say, he would always know, which mic was calling based on how much bass was in his voice. And when Mike was fired up, it was a different experience. And I recently heard Run DMC doing an interview that they were supposed to do a collaboration with Michael, and DMC was startled when Bubbles ran up on him and he hit Bubbles, and there was no and Michael never called back. The collaboration was over, and so I quickly realized, knowing all of the true stories, that the only person that ever hit Bubbles and learned to still and lived to still have a loving relationship with Michael Jackson was Dick Gregory. When now let me explain it. I'm glad it's not, because Peter would have Peter had a great relationship with Dick Gregory, but they would have had to cut him loose on this one. So my dad had a different relationship with animals. I mean, the civil rights movement, dogs weren't pets. Dogs were on leashes. They were ferocious. They were trained to go after black people. So whenever he saw an animal, he always moved away from it. And so he tells the story, and I've heard it multiple times, and it's never changed. And I heard it from Michael too, and my sister Lynn, I believe, was there. And so he said, out of the corner of his eye, he saw some shit coming at him, and he said he knew it was little, it was wearing a tux, and he didn't know what the fuck. He kicked the shit out of Bubbles. Bubbles slid across the room. Michael screamed. And Pop was like, "What the? You got this little nigga running up on me with a tuxedo and a fucking diaper?"
Oh my God, I wish I saw them.
And so Michael screamed, and then the new protocol was, whenever Dick comes over, put Bubbles in the back. And so, it wasn't Dick's not allowed to come over anymore. It just was, they had to Dick Gregory proof Bubbles. So, and it was, there's so many stories. But yes, he had a wonderful relationship with Michael. He was there when Sony was doing some real nasty things to Michael Jackson, some real, right now we sit here, I think they call it the Havana syndrome, where some have been using microwave signals in people in U.S. intelligence have been getting quite sick. I don't know, lasers, sound. I know we've moved away from guns and bullets a long time ago. So I don't know. I mean, lasers make planes crash all the time. So I don't know. But what I do know is, if someone did play a hand in killing Michael Jackson, there's lots of it. Even with Prince. I mean, there's a lot that still needs to be explained and part of it, some of it's the lifestyle. I mean, the pain that these people have that we don't. In Prince, you think you're both Dick Gregory fans? Yeah. I've never met a bigger Dick Gregory fan than Prince. I mean, Prince had a segment when you walked into his home, just a shrine to Dick Gregory. I mean, it was off-putting. I mean, just a shrine to Dick Gregory. And my dad and I, we were connecting in Minneapolis, and Prince ran over, gave my dad the world's biggest hug. And that brother was always fly, always the folks around him. Wow. And you would have thought my dad knew every Prince song by the way they were talking. Prince turned and walked away. My pops said, "Who was that little motherfucker?" He had no idea who he was talking to. He had no, but he'll roll with you. Hey, but how's the family? How's it this? He'll roll with you. He won't say, "Hey, I don't know you," because sometimes he just needs a gentle, but who was that little motherfucker? And I said, "Pop, that little motherfucker is Prince." I said, he's one of the biggest, iconic recording artists in the world.
What is this thing with Dick and musicians? Like, I know a guy from Memphis named Charles Lloyd. He talked about how Dick came to his birthday at the Kennedy Center. He's a great jazz saxophonist.
Oh, I was there. I was there.
It's a birthday.
Yeah. He was. I was there. What is
this thing with him and musicians?
It was. Back then, so much has changed. Back then, comedy and musicians always shared stages. So, my dad would be part. Sometimes he would open, sometimes they would open. But the piece at the Kennedy Center you're talking about, they were trying to kind of bring that energy back. That wasn't that terribly long ago, but they were trying to bring that energy back of having Dick Gregory do comedy. I have some great photographs from that night that I'll share with y'all. But and it was just a great set. My dad had the ability in his frontal lobe to kind of, compartmentalize his comedy, his nutritional knowledge, his lectures, his financial lectures. And as he got older, those firewalls broke down and they started to bleed through. So, he was always funny in what he was doing, but, 2 or 3 high schools that he was speaking at, because he used to speak at a lot of high schools, we got some pretty fiery letters sent that, Mr. Gregory's language was way out of line for our high school. So finally we said, there was some of the civics like, let's have an intervention. I said, you have no intervention on Dick Gregory. I said, that would have been some shit to document. Let me watch y'all niggas go in here and intervene on Dad. That would have been some entertaining shit. And I would have been the main one that edged him on to do it and then jumped way to the back just shaking my head. Pop, I don't know what these niggas are thinking about. So let's intervene on Dick Gregory.
Like
It would have been, a couple bubbles, some couple niggas sliding across the floor. So it was, and we decided, let's allow, and decisions for my dad were never, we're going to tell you what to do. It was just, you gently, and we reached out, and there was a Zoli, who was a young lady who became my dad's, booking agent and road manager and manager for comedy. She was working with Paul Mooney at the time, and they said, hey, well, why don't we put together a tour? And they were really kind of saving Dick Gregory's life. And so the beauty of Paul Mooney and Dick Gregory, there was always, because both of them were dealing with some health issues at that time. And so both of them refused to say who's opening for who. And if they heard anyone in their camp say, oh, Paul's opening or Dick's opening, they'd be, don't disrespect Paul, don't disrespect Dick. It's who's going first. And it was so beautiful to see the respect that they had. No. Because my dad always said, Paul would always say, no one, Dick Gregory, I'm not opening for Dick Gregory. I'm going to never be foolish enough. And depending on whose health, who was dealing, whoever was feeling better would always be the closer. And so, but they would never say, they're going second. And so you've both seen these shows. I mean, it was dynamic. But what you didn't see were the amount of folks, the curtains were always closed, helping them into their chairs, opening the curtains up. And some days my dad would be spry and jog out there himself. I mean, the aging process, the math isn't linear. Some days you're a true 84. Some days you're like 64. And there's no rhyme. Some hour it will change. So it was just always standing by to be where we always brought tables out with a lot of props on it for my dad. So if he did lose track of what he was doing, he could pick up something and hold it up. And, we'd spend an hour deciding what we were going to do. And he never touched none of it because he was such a professional. He would just go. And my dad never did. You can look at all his old comedy. He used a lot of profanity, when he was just kicking it with the folks, but never on stage. When Paul Mooney's health in dementia really started to impact him, my dad pivoted. He started, becoming, almost morphing like a little into Paul with his delivery. And that was intentional. He said, I wanted, these Paul Mooney folks are coming here. His fans are coming here to get this. And so while Paul's reacclimating and, going through a process until he bounces back fully, I'm going to give it to him. It was a beautiful respect. And so, so whether it's Paul Mooney, Bill Cosby, as my dad would always say, show me our good. Show me our good. All we want to talk about is the bad. You look at Paul Mooney, have you heard this, brother? Show me our good. There's a disproportionate amount of good out here. Even Bill Cosby, I don't know what happened, and nor do I want to know. I'm not the criminal justice system, but I know you tell me that we're a land of law and order, a nation of law and order. But there's a disproportionate response when black folks do things than white things. I've been arrested since I was 8 years old in the civil rights movement. I can remember a time, my little wrist with little zip tie on them being led into a hot ass bus in Reedsville, Louisiana, gnats and humidity, and sitting there for hours they put all the children, not the Segregation, and the other children, all on a bus. And we just sat there and just roasted. That was our punishment. Y'all little niggas gonna roast in this heat. And we just roasted. Fast forward to, January 2021, and the attack on democracy as the Capitol is attacked. And I'm watching, white folks that look like every teacher I had in elementary school, every teacher I had in high school, all us Gregorys went to black colleges, so not the teachers I had in college, storm, this nation's capital. And I'm like, I got comfortable. I had some popcorn. I said, we were about to see some white folks get arrested. I know that because I knew my little ass at 8 was arrested. I said, oh no, this shit's about to get fun. And so to watch all of them walk out, some of them helped down the stairs, it was a sad moment because we're going to show you the duality. We're a nation of laws, but you show me the man and I'll tell you the law. And if anyone needs to be crystal clear on that, just look at how that went down and look how it's still going down. We had officers get beat to death. Just imagine if folks that looked like us had even did a fraction of that. So we sit here, oh, we love this country, and it's my dad. My dad loved America. That's all he knew. He just, we've been all. My dad, and that's another documentary. 3 a.m. in the morning, gambling in Accra. Dick Gregory hit for $1 million Ghanaian dollars, and which with the current exchange rate may have been about $1,000. And he said, "Oh man, this is just fucking $1,000." I said, "Pop, $1 million fucking dollars is $1 million fucking dollars to the folks who live here." I was like, we need to ease up out of here because all types of bells and excitement. And so and just the stories, just the love. Harare, Zimbabwe, Accra, Ghana. I could go on for hours, just the love. The pilots, we flew to Ghana. It was either Ghanaian Air or Air Ghana. And the pilot, midway in the flight, went and got us and brought us up into the cockpit and pulled these little jump seat downs for us to sit in the cockpit as these 3 brothers are flying this 747 as we landed in Accra. The things that, and I'm clear, it's not like, this is not for the love of Christian Gregory. Christian Gregory is just riding on the coattails and being able to witness and experience the love and the history. So he was a lot of things to a lot of people. But the man loved his people. The man absolutely loved his people. The week he died, Bill Cosby called 5 times with all that Bill was going through at that time, because that was the time of his trial, just to make sure that Dick Gregory was clear how much Bill Cosby loved him. And he was real clear. Hey, Christian, write this down for your dad. When he wakes up, I want him, this is the first thing I'd like for you. And it wasn't always the first thing I handed him in full disclosure, but wanted this to, because there were a lot of things going on, just to know that Bill Cosby loves Dick Gregory, and there would be no Bill Cosby without Dick Gregory. And just with all he had going on, he could have simply sent some flowers. Every day he called. And then finally he called a day that my dad was up to talking, and my dad talked to Bill Cosby about an hour, and then Minister Farrakhan called, and we recorded all of this, audio and video. Minister Farrakhan called, and they spoke for about an hour. And those were my dad's last 2. That was all the eulogy I needed. At my dad's funeral, the 7 hours, y'all didn't see me other than inviting people there. I was in the back working. It was a beautiful church, and thank you to the first family of this church, just being so incredibly gracious with their space. But Minister Farrakhan, when he shows up, he rolls deep, and so we had the Christian security service of the church, we had the Fruit of Islam, and there was some shit popping off. So I was like, damn, it was like it was biblical. I'm trying to step like I'm between you 2 brothers now. Saying, wait a minute, hey, we this is for Dick Gregory. This is for Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory has never been into isms and osms. We all need to take a deep breath. And so, oh no, man, it was, I didn't see my dad's funeral to 6 weeks later when I watched on YouTube, because I had already, the conversation that my dad had with Minister Farrakhan was all the eulogy that I would ever need. So no, it's been a real blessing.
Wow. Well, final thoughts. There's a lot. I know a lot of people when they watch the interviews with Bob and Dick, they say, "Wow, I wonder what he would say if he was here now. This just happened in the news. This just happened in the news. Vaccine, the Capitol. This. What can you generally share with us, to take us into the future when more things like this happen? These racial injustices, these health crises, the government. What did Dick Gregory stand for? What would he say today? in your opinion?
And I won't even, Mike, I won't even give you my opinion. I'll give you Dick's opinion because he's saying it. It's, I mean, all of these things he addressed because none of it's new, So one, either directly or indirectly, he touched on it. There's huge sections in some of my dad's health books and lectures about vaccines. And so, my dad, so most of the younger Gregory children, myself included, were never vaccinated for anything. None of the childhood vaccinated, none of it. My dad with his cancer didn't do chemo, didn't do radiation, but he never was telling people, don't none of y'all do. It's how you live your life. We're not anti-vaxxers. We're do what you do and how you live your life. Some of these things out here, my dad had a great line that he would say. He said, man, I was walking in the park and, this brother came up, had cocaine dust on his nose, heroin needle on his arm, and I offered him an apple. And he said, but Brother Dick, is it organic? And so how you live your life is profoundly important to, half these things, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, Mickey D's, you've already ate everything in the vaccine every day of your life. So now to say, no, good for the protection of the community, let me drive you to your vaccination appointment. Like it depends how you. So my dad, he just through the way he treated his mind and body as a temple, there's the best defense the best defense is strong offense. The best offense is strong defense. And so he didn't just, I'm sick, let me take this now. It. The man would line, hundreds of supplements out and just be popping them all day long. I mean, it was he understood the body needs nutrition, not food. And he always, like his Bahamian diet, his 4X formula that's now in his Caribbean shake, all of these things were about optimizing whole food. As you hear in the video, this is Dick Gregory back in the 60s talking about whole foods. I mean, and very clear talking about whole foods. The body needs whole foods, whole nutrients. Every Dick Gregory supplement was always a whole food. It wasn't these kind of Frankenstein. He talked about genetically modified food. Half of the tomatoes and carrots out here aren't tomatoes and carrots. And so he saw all of that long before the shift. Monsanto and what they're doing with the seeds. He was very clear on all of that. So when people say, hey, would Dick Gregory get the... Do you know the brother at all? Like, of course, he's not going to sit here and say, well, I'm not getting the vaccine because Brother Dick told me that. He's not going to tell you what to do, but he's going to lead by example and not wait till there's a pandemic to strengthen his immune system. And so it's important because there'll be, there's hundreds of thousands of microbes, and there's a small percentage of them that are deadly to human beings. Not everyone that got COVID died. So to say, this is a deadly disease, it's deadly for some, but not, and most of it is people that have poor immune systems, elevated amount of inflammation in their body, primarily their lungs, were the ones that there was an over-immune response, an autoimmune response, where the immune system flooded the lungs with fluid, and those people basically drown on their own lymphatic fluids. And so that's your body turning on you because our immune system, it's taken so many blows, it's just on the ropes. So when people say, we learned a lot during this pandemic. I mean, it really taught us a lot about ourselves. There was a tremendous amount of silver linings and to slow down. And what my dad would always say, slow down and sit still. You talk too damn much. So he had a lot to say because he lived it. Right. But to slow down, take your time, and sit still. And so, a lot of if Dick Gregory was ever aggressive with someone, with either one, it was out of love. And what a lot of people, these things get edited, always at the end, hugs, God bless the family, love your brother, love you, and so because I know I'll see the comments and they'll say, oh man, it couldn't have been me. I don't know how he sat there and took that. Shit, I sat there and took, because you're witnessing. It ain't about, I never took any of it personally. It was just, I'm honored to be here. And thank you to both of you, because had you said, I'm packing my shit up and getting out, we wouldn't have it. Yeah, we wouldn't have, because he's gone now. So whatever we didn't get. So in the height of his career, it was, the big professional news agencies follow him everywhere. It was the FBI follow him. And as we get, later in life, it was brothers like both of y'all and the others out here that provided a platform. I mean, we looked a lot at the work that y'all did as we were putting this film together. I remember Andre, I think, reached out to both of you. So it is, to tell the totality of Dick Gregory's story, we wanted to look and are still looking at everything. So no, this is just, this is an honor. It's a privilege, to sit here and know both of you brothers as well as I do, and know how much admiration, my dad used to, we'd always say, hey, and we would just talk about wild shit on road trips. Like, hey, if you're walking down the street and a white boy say, hey, nigga, look out. Are you going to respond to nigger or are you going to look out? I said, man, I'm ducking. I don't give a fuck what he was like. I'm ducking. And he said, you know what? If Tiger Woods was out with all his white buddies at the golf club and the cops rode him and they said, nigger, get on the ground. He said, all Tigers would be like, Tiger, get on the ground. He said, and he said, but why do you, if I walked in the room and said, I hate all you billionaires, you wouldn't feel any way. So if I said, I hate all you niggas, if you know you're not a nigga, well, you don't give a fuck. And so that was his, and he would use laughter and comedy in just the most brilliant way to drive a point home. If you ain't a hoe, don't call you a hoe. If you're on the fence and that's some processing you have to do. So there's a fine line between anger and passion. And Dick Gregory, because he's so expressive, he's so, he communicated with his face, he communicated with his body, and then he communicated verbally. Yeah. And all three of those came together to just really be a beautiful expression of love. And it's he's the least violent man I've ever known. But as he got older, a defense mechanism of a louder bark was, and it's somewhat typical with old age, of a louder, and I just knew. It's like, oh, look, that loud bark over there is nothing but love. It may not sound like love, but it is rooted and is nothing but love. And when that interview wraps up, there's only one brother that the interview went sideways. It was a newspaper interview in Richmond. I wasn't there, but I got a call immediately from the publisher, and it was a younger brother who clearly didn't, quick segue. My pops didn't trust credit cards. He was cash operation. It was always cash. And so we're at downtown DC. He cashed a $10,000 check, walking out, counting them. I said, Pop, these young folks, you're just an old cat with a pocket full of money. I said, we would put that away till we get to the car because, and he thought of it and said, damn, you know what, you're right. A lot of younger folks didn't know who he was. And so, sometimes he would say some shit to folks like, and they would rise up like, well, ho. And then other brothers would be like, oh, hey, young blood, you know who that is? And so I very rarely ever had to step in because I knew that others would. And so when this brother was interviewing him down in Richmond, I guess he jumped up and like flipped a chair and went to like charge at my dad. And someone put their hand up. I was not there. My dad's other body man, Keith Silver, was there. Shout out to Keith Silver, just an amazing, beautiful human being. And just really, there was a real solid team around Dick Gregory that were all folks that just loved and adored the man. So I didn't hear about it from my dad. The publisher, because I had set the interview up, called me to say, it was clearly a white cat. I'm so embarrassed, but it was a brother who was interviewing my dad. I am so embarrassed by what happened today. I just got word of it. Keep in mind, I don't know. I'm getting ready to say, what the hell are you talking about? And I just want you and your father to know we fired that journalist today. He was fired immediately. And I just said, oh, okay. I said, well, no, I'll wait till I hear, clearly he thinks it was reported back to me. So I don't want to think that, hey, I'm not high enough on the pecking order that it wasn't reported back to me. And when my dad said, hey, what happened now? He said, oh, nothing. It was a great interview. I was like, wait a minute. I said, the white cat called, said they fired. He said, that nigga did. He said, that nigga, I said, I told that nigga he was about to find out. Fucking with me is not like fucking with these other niggas. And so sure enough, shout out to that brother for showing folks what not to do.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you, gentlemen.
All right, so for those who hung out with us, this is us chopping it up together for the first time.
And may not ever happen. So this is history. Yeah,
this is history.
Yeah, this is history.
But if you know, if you think you know, if you don't know, July 4th is when it all goes down. The one and only Dick Gregory.
Please. You won't be disappointed. You will not be disappointed. The one and only Dick Gregory. And I just want to, the Roots, Black Thought. And they didn't play it, but when you see it on Showtime, his new song, which is a tribute to Dick Gregory, At Your Service, is just a beautiful, beautiful song. And, Dick Gregory was Black Thought. Dick Gregory, as we sit here, we're Black Thoughts. And I said that with Lena Waithe on the stage last night. Like, my dad would always say, I'm super Black. And he wasn't talking about complexion. It was a lifestyle. It was an attitude. My dad didn't believe there were white people. He thought most of them were imposters. He said, I believe there's maybe 5 white people in the world. The rest of them are imposters. If you don't have $1 trillion in the bank, your ass can't be white. And so he said most of the folks, they would kill them white boys on the way to come and get you. And so he was very clear the importance of being super Black. This is a super Black production that just is befitting everyone that played a role. It's just a tremendous amount, 6 years, which is just a profoundly long time. The first 3 years of it, because I've been hearing all the comments about, they better get the story right. I'm like, you telling me what I better do? Go make a documentary. As you know, anyone can make a documentary. My dad's life is public record. Mm-hmm. So, I hope there are as many Dick Gregory documentaries, and because there's so much, there's way more than the Gregory family could ever do. So I would encourage, if you have a Dick Gregory, share it, just like you brothers are doing on your platform. But on July 4th, we'd like for you to check out the one and only Dick Gregory on Showtime, 9 p.m. Eastern. I'm not a marketing cat, so I'm going to leave that to Showtime. But while I have this opportunity, and I want y'all to reach out. Once you see it in the proper environment, we watch it outside. But once you see it in the proper environment, let's chop it up and let's discuss how you feel about it, what the experience was like for you. Excellent. Thank you all, and brother Ron, Mike, always a pleasure. Yeah. Take good care. God bless, folks.
We love you, man.
He gave so much of himself to a movement, to a people.
He wanted to be a part of the change, and he always fought for that change.
My goals is to really help change the priorities in this country.
No man has given more, asked less, or been more needed.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dick Gregory.